Detective Marlowe stood frozen at the monitor as the latest 911 call flashed across the screen, originating from a house officially listed as disconnected from all power and communication lines. Dispatcher Ellis remembered the first call clearly, a line filled with absolute silence that lingered long enough to feel intentional. Officer Reyes couldn't forget the unsettling stillness of the abandoned house, a place that felt occupied despite every trace saying otherwise. Technician Ward reviewed the data again and again, unable to understand how a dead phone line sent a perfect emergency signal. Each of them had seen strange cases before, but none of them could explain how a house with no residents, no electricity, and no working phone managed to call for help 3 times, each more deliberate than the last. The 911 dispatch center was used to false alarms, accidental dials, and silent calls from malfunctioning devices, but there was something unsettling about this one from the moment it connected. The line came alive at exactly 9:47 p.m., marked automatically in the system with a timestamp and location code. The call showed as active, yet there were no sounds, not even the faint hum of background static that usually came with an open line. The dispatcher listened carefully, waiting for breathing, movement, a creak, anything that might hint at human presence. Instead, the silence pressed through the headset so heavily that it felt intentional, almost as if someone was on the other side, listening just as closely. Normally, silent calls ended quickly, disconnected by the caller or flagged by the system, but this one stayed connected without interruption. The screen displayed a location just outside town limits, a residential property far from busy neighborhoods. It was a place that rarely drew attention. Following standard procedure, the dispatcher attempted to speak into the line. The system recorded every second, every attempt, and every unanswered moment. When the call continued past the 1-minute threshold, it triggered the requirement to send officers to check the location. 2 patrol cars were assigned. As they drove toward the property, the dispatcher continued monitoring the call, still hoping for a change. The duration stretched past to minutes before the line suddenly cut off without warning. No click, no background shift, just instant disconnection, as though whatever had made the call decided it had gone on long enough. When the officers pulled into the narrow dirt driveway, their headlights cut across a house that looked perfectly ordinary. A basic two-story structure with shuttered windows and an overgrown front yard, it appeared abandoned but stable. No lights were visible inside, and the front steps were coated in leaves that looked undisturbed. The officers approached cautiously, checking for movement. Nothing responded to their presence. The front door was locked tight, and the windows showed no sign of forced entry. They circled the house, and their flashlights swept across walls that showed no damage or recent maintenance. It was just a house, yet the air around it felt still in a way that unsettled even experienced officers. They reported back that the area was clear, with no signs of emergency, no visible victim, and no indication that anyone was inside. The call was marked and resolved but non-critical. However, even after leaving, a sense of something being unfinished followed them back to the station. The records department began pulling information on the property the next morning. What they found confirmed the officers' suspicion that something about the location was off. The house had been listed as vacant for almost 14 months. The previous occupants had left without filing any forwarding address or utility transfer, something unusual but not illegal. The official documents showed that the electricity had been disconnected after months of non-payment, and the water line had been sealed shortly after. It was supposed to be uninhabited, a structure simply waiting for either demolition or sale. With that in mind, the silent 911 call became even more perplexing. To place a call from inside that house, a functioning line would have been required, yet phone service records indicated that the connection to that address had been terminated a year ago. There were no reports of squatters, no complaints from neighbors about trespassing or strange activity. Local patrol logs showed that officers passed the area occasionally, but no suspicious incidents were ever documented there. It was a house forgotten by paperwork and overlooked by routine. Despite the lack of activity, the dispatcher's report remained in the system, and a red marker flagged it for unusual behavior. The timestamp of the call was reviewed, and the digital route was traced. The connection clearly originated from within the property perimeter, verified by network data that could not be easily falsified without specialized equipment. That raised a new concern: if someone had managed to reconnect a line or jury rig a way to send a call through an inactive circuit, then it was either a highly skilled prank or something more organized. Even then, no equipment was found on the first inspection, and nothing looked tampered with. Investigators considered the possibility of an error in the routing system. A test was done by simulating a signal from a nearby tower, but no glitch could replicate the event. Everything about the empty house appeared normal, yet the data said otherwise. With limited resources and no immediate threat identified, the case was archived temporarily, but not fully closed. Before it was filed away, one final detail was noted. The exact call duration was listed to minutes and 13 seconds. It ended sharply at that mark, not a second more. There was no drop in signal quality, no gradual fade. It was as if something had been waiting for that precise moment to end the connection. That detail was marked as odd but unexplained, left in the notes of a report very few people would ever bother to read again. 2 weeks passed without any mention of the incident. The report sat untouched in the system, slowly becoming just another unexplained case in a long list of minor anomalies. Then, without warning, another silent call came through from the exact same location. This time it connected late at night, at nearly the same hour as the first one. The dispatcher on duty noticed the red marker attached to the address and felt a quiet alertness settle in. Again, the line carried no sound. The call lingered for over a minute before officers were notified. As protocol demanded, units were dispatched a second time. The same house stood waiting at the end of the same unpaved driveway, just as abandoned as before. There were no footprints leading to the door, no sign of human presence. The officers documented that the yellow tape placed during the previous check still sealed the entrance. Nothing had disturbed it. The silence of the scene did not match the urgency that came with a direct 911 signal. A decision was made to inspect the exterior more thoroughly. They circled the house slowly, scanning for broken locks, shattered glass, or makeshift entry points. Everything remained untouched. The ground was soft from recent rain, but no sign of movement was visible. Even the leaves remained piled in the same undisturbed patterns. Despite that, the dispatch system had tracked the origin of the call to within a few meters inside the house. Confusion began to grow among the responding officers. A technician was called in the following day to examine whether any power source could still be active. The reading came back with a faint signal of electrical activity occurring in short bursts during the night, specifically within a narrow 2-hour window. That should have been impossible. The official shutdown order of the property confirmed that the wiring had been locked and tagged. No energy should have been flowing to any part of the structure. What puzzled the team even more was the discovery of minimal heat detection inside one of the upper rooms. The thermal reading was slight, almost insignificant, but it indicated something had recently warmed the air in that area, like a brief presence or a device powering on momentarily. No one could explain it, and the house was again left untouched after a final perimeter check. The second call was logged with a higher priority note, but still, no official investigation was launched. The structure remained boarded, dark, and officially empty, yet the data suggested that something inside it continued to reach out deliberately, as if trying to be heard without ever using a voice. A decision was made to conduct a full interior inspection with authorization to enter. A specialized team arrived equipped with recording tools, thermal scanners, and motion sensors. The front door was carefully unsealed and opened, releasing a stale gust of air that smelled untouched by recent life. Inside, the house appeared exactly as expected: empty rooms, stripped of furniture, floors coated in a thin layer of dust. The walls held faint marks from previous residents, but nothing stood out as abnormal. The team moved systematically through each room, documenting every corner. The downstairs living area showed no signs of forced entry or recent movement. Even the dust patterns remained smooth, as if no footsteps had crossed them in months. It was only when they reached the second floor that something unusual caught their attention. One section of the hallway floor seemed slightly uneven, raised by no more than a fraction of an inch, but enough to suggest a modification beneath it. The subtle shift might have been dismissed under different circumstances, but with 2 unexplained emergency calls already traced to this location, every detail mattered. A member of the team knelt and carefully pressed on the surface. The floorboard flexed slightly, confirming a gap underneath. After a thorough search, an almost invisible cut line was found running beneath the hallway rug. The rug was peeled back slowly, revealing a rectangular panel fitted seamlessly into the floor. It had no visible handle, just a narrow indentation that allowed a grip. When lifted, it exposed a dark, narrow passage leading downward. The hidden space was not listed in any building schematics. There was no record of it being part of the original construction or added through legal renovation. The passage descended into a small concealed room with walls made of unfinished boards. The floor was cleaner than the rest of the house, suggesting more recent use. On one wall, faint markings ran in erratic lines, as though something had scraped repeatedly against the surface. In the corner sat a simple device connected to a tangle of wires that disappeared into the wall. It was not a standard phone. It had no receiver, no keypad, only a single embedded button. The team documented everything in silence. The device was functional, confirmed to have power despite the house being officially disconnected. Without touching it, they could see a faint indicator light pulsing at slow intervals, as if waiting for activation. No fingerprints were found on the surface, no trace of recent human touch. Whatever had used the hidden space had done so without leaving evidence, operating with precision and purpose unknown. Surveillance equipment was installed across the property to monitor any future activity. Cameras were positioned to capture every entrance and window, while a thermal unit focused on the hidden room detected even the slightest change in temperature. Days passed without incident. The house remained still, a silent structure with no visible signs of life. Then, just after midnight during heavy rainfall, the dispatch system registered another incoming 911 call. The timestamp aligned almost exactly with the previous two calls, continuing a pattern none had noticed until that moment. The call connected for only 1 minute. This time, footage from the nearest camera showed a faint flicker of light in the upstairs window at the precise moment the signal was recorded. The surveillance team reacted immediately and accessed the feed from the interior device near the hidden room. The indicator light on the single-button device glowed steadily, no longer pulsing. Something had triggered it. Officers were dispatched and entered the property with deliberate caution. The rain had softened the ground outside, but again, there were no footprints or tire tracks apart from the responding units. Inside, the air felt colder than before, like something had drained the warmth from the enclosed space. As the team descended into the hidden room, they found the device exactly where it had been left. But one detail had changed. The floor around it showed a small disturbance in the dust layer, a faint circular imprint, as if something had briefly rested there. Next to the device lay a single fingerprint mark on the wall, visible due to the light coating of dust outlining its shape. It appeared clear and fresh, yet no matching record could be found when cross-referenced through databases. It did not match any of the officers, technicians, or previous residents linked to the property. The pattern of the print itself seemed abnormal, slightly elongated, with ridges not entirely consistent with typical human structure. The discovery left the investigation without direction. No person was found. No explanation for the active device could be confirmed. Official documentation marked the incident as unresolved and ongoing, with a recommendation that the house remain under restricted access. After that night, no more calls were received, but the device in the hidden room remained connected to a power source that should not exist. Over time, the story of the house faded from local attention, becoming just another unsolved entry buried in emergency records. Yet the report remained open, waiting for the moment the silent line would connect again without a caller, reaching out from a place that should have been empty.